not gonna shoot a puppy, are you, Jack?
Yeah, in the face. Why?
This contest is over. Give that man the $10,000.
Over the last decade plus change, people have increasingly used sites like Twitter to discuss all manner of media, which in turn has had the effect of them becoming increasingly invested in the quality of the stories they look at. Admittedly, this is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, there were people, even among the most casual popcorn-munching audiences, looking at the rise of Skywalker and saying, "Wow, this plot is absolutely terrible and stupid."
They fly now!
On the other hand, there are plenty of people who look at this movie and say that it's a deep and intellectual masterpiece.
That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
Ah, no! Cringy!
But also it's a dumb space wizard movie for babies if you ever criticize it. Yeah, you try and figure out how that works. Why does it always come back to these three movies? I need to find other sources of garbage I can point to. There's an endless procession of hot takes around media these days on just about every topic you can think of, but for one reason or another, villains are very popular to discuss. But one element that I do see crop up from time to time is the idea that if a villain is completely unsympathetic or pure evil, they're automatically bad as a character. Bad in terms of quality, not morality. The idea being that a villain in a current day piece of work needs to have at least something going for them, be that sympathetic motives or origins, goals that are at least partially understandable to the audience, or some shot of them having a redemption arc down the line.
Hello, Zuko here.
Now, of course, none of these elements are inherently bad, and many of them can be done quite well. Though I do say this as someone who is more than a little bit sick of stories that say, well, the antagonist was sad one time, ergo you need to treat them with kid gloves. Yeah, no, fuck that noise. This old crone got off way too fucking lightly. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah, right, villains. The question you may be asking yourself is, does a villain having sympathetic qualities automatically make them superior to a pure evil unsympathetic villain? Or is a work automatically more mature and deep if, rather than having a villain, it focuses more on a concept being an antagonist, like generational trauma?
The answer is no.
Like with most things, this is largely dependent on execution, but no, there's nothing inherent about these things that make them automatically superior to just having a regular-ass pure evil villain. If you'd like, you could try and ask all 5 people who went to see Strange World what they thought of the narrative structure of that movie. They're currently having a convention on the planet of people who don't exist. If anything, the harder one leans into being morally complex when it comes to their antagonists, the more likely they are to absolutely fuck up the landing. What matters most is the quality of the writing, and when it comes to villains who are pure evil in nature, it's very important to ensure that they are at least entertaining in some capacity. What did he mean by this? Well, I'll tell you, Dave. Many people will say that having a villain totally devoid of any sympathetic or understandable qualities runs the risk of them being incredibly boring, and I can certainly see the logic to that. For instance, if your main antagonist is some sort of vague, nebulously defined darkness or an evil force of nature, yeah, I can understand that being seen as incredibly dull. But really, there's only 2 things you need to do if you want a pure evil villain to be engrossing to the audience. Firstly, they need to be entertaining to watch, by which I mean they can either be funny/charismatic, or their antics can just be enjoyable/engrossing for the viewer to watch. Or both. The second key factor is, sooner or later, they need to suffer karma for their terrible actions. Of course, it's all too easy for a creator to fail in making an engrossing pure evil villain, and when such endeavors fail, they tend to fail pretty damn hard. Ramsay Bolton is undeniably one of the worst aspects of Game of Thrones aside from the final season. The guy was pure evil and irredeemable, no doubt, but his antics weren't enjoyable to watch because the universe itself seemed to bend over backwards to let him do insane nonsense. Boy, this medieval fantasy show that wanted to present itself as being grounded and realistic sure was eager to have him win a shirtless knife fight against a bunch of armed soldiers. And sure, Ramsey eventually met consequences for his actions, when the showrunners were done jerking off over the guy, but by that point he'd gotten away with so much logic-bending bullshit that it wasn't even satisfying. It was just a case of, God, get this guy off screen, he sucks.
I need 20 good men.
But what, by my estimation, constitutes a good irredeemable villain? Well, I do happen to have a few examples on hand, so let's go through them.
Dear God, no!
Dio Brando is undeniably the single most influential villain in the entire JoJo's franchise, so much so that every single part has at least some sort of tie directly towards him. While it can certainly be argued that Dio in Part 3 and certainly in Part 6 has more depth to his character, Phantom Blood Dio is very much a mustache-twirling asshole. The literal second Dio becomes a vampire, he starts eating people and merging human heads onto dog bodies just because he thinks it's really funny to do that. He's a funny little guy just having a fun old time. Really, you know a character's going to be a horrible asshole when their very first proper act on screen is to kick a dog in the face for basically no reason. The interesting thing about Dio is that his background does actually have some sympathetic elements, and yet you really can't even bring yourself to feel bad for the guy. Sure, he comes from an abusive household where his dad looks like the main bad guy in an NTR story, but then he falls ass backward into one of the richest households in England. But that isn't good enough for Dio. Oh no, ruthless ambition drives him to seek more and more. Plus, you know, the whole dog-kicking thing. Dio spends so much of his screen time just being a huge asshole or doing reprehensible things while bragging about how great he is that it really makes him enjoyable to watch and equally enjoyable to despise. And similarly, that's what makes it so enjoyable whenever good boy Jonathan gets to beat the crap out of him. And while Phantom Blood is often regarded as the weakest part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Dio's wicked charisma and terrible antics easily make him the high point of it. Similar to Dio, Frieza from Dragon Ball is a character who has a massive effect even in story arcs he's not physically a part of. A character so massively, terrifyingly powerful that so much of his initial story arc involved the protagonist doing everything they could to run away from the guy and not get in his crosshairs. When the time came to finally throw hands with the guy, Frieza steamrolled the heroes, like continuously. Whenever it looked like they got even close to having the upper hand, bam, new transformation and fresh ass kicking. Frieza was able to exude an immense presence just from how incredibly overpowered he felt relative to the heroes, and it was furthered along by some amazing voice work, similar to Dio.
Precisely. When ants battle a dinosaur, who do you think emerges the victor?
The dub voice actor who took over for Frieza around the time Kai started airing, Chris Ayers, gave him an immense amount of charisma, and it's a real shame that he's no longer with us. Frieza spends a large portion of his screen time switching between being sinister yet charming and doing terrible atrocities to the main characters. The man is, unironically, the CEO of racism. And yet what's most fascinating is, despite all these years, we've really never learned anything on Frieza's backstory beyond what we already knew on Namek. We know that he was born immensely overpowered and that he became the ruler of a galactic empire, but that's about it. No real tragic backstory or anything to justify his actions, he's just like that. But man, reviving him as a recurring character is definitely one of the smartest decisions that was ever made with the Dragon Ball IP. Every time he shows up, it's always queued for the hypest shit imaginable. To cite a more modern example, and to prove that this list isn't exclusively weeb shit, let's take a quick look at Big Jack Horner from Puss in Boots 2. A movie that was far better than anyone dared to believe possible. While Death was undoubtedly the most popular villain to emerge from that movie, Big Jack Horner is undoubtedly great in his own right, partially due to how great John Mulaney's performance was.
We're gonna frame you for murder!
The character was able to get his own fandom even if he was being overshadowed by furry bait, so that's no small accomplishment. Just about every single second of screen time that Jack Horner has is dedicated to him being a terrible, horrible asshole but being absolutely hilarious in the process. It's pretty telling that, even though the movie is still relatively new, quite a few scenes involving Jack Horner already have memes around them. The guy is as quotable as he is irredeemable.
You're an irredeemable monster!
What took you so long, idiot?
They even took the time to mock the whole concept of a tragic backstory, which is a very welcome thing to see in this day and age. And as a character, he certainly serves as an example that you can have a villain who is funny, intimidating, and totally irredeemable in equal measure. I could go on. I could mention examples like various incarnations of the Joker where he is basically less society man and is just evil and funny, but otherwise lacking in depth beyond being an evil clown man. Or Lalo Salamanca from Better Call Saul, who can effortlessly flip between being a charming gentleman and cold-blooded psychopath and is always enthralling to watch as a result. I'm legally required to mention the Breaking Bad franchise at least once per video. It's a very serious problem. But by now I'm sure you're all starting to notice the pattern that I've been pointing towards, that it's entirely possible to have an engaging and engrossing villain that's pure evil and irredeemable provided there are some entertaining aspects to the character. Not that every villain needs to be like that, you understand, but it's also kind of ridiculous that creators try and run away from having pure evil antagonists. Speaking from my own personal interest, however, I think at this point I'd watch 100 stories with a bad guy like Big Jack Horner before I suffer through a single thing with a Kylo Ren-styled villain.